Welcome to This Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because we're going to look at something that quietly dictates almost every major choice you make. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that a simple spinning wheel of fortune, like something you'd see on a daytime game show, could completely alter how you judge cold, hard, real-world facts. I mean, it sounds totally absurd, right? You consider yourself a pretty rational person. But today, we're going to see exactly how your brain gets hijacked by this invisible force.
So let me ask you this bizarre question straight up. Can a wheel of fortune change how you judge a country? Like, if you spin a wheel and it lands on a completely random number, does that actually change your geographical knowledge? Most of us would immediately say, no way. That defies all logic. But human psychology is, well, it's incredibly strange. And the way our brains process numbers is far less logical than we'd like to admit.
Section 1. The Wheel of Fortune. Tversky and Kahneman, 1974.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To really understand how easily our logic is bypassed, let's look at a legendary 1974 study. Researchers brought participants into a room and literally spun a wheel of fortune right in front of them. Then they asked them to guess the percentage of African countries in the United Nations. And this brilliantly illustrates the mind-bending results. Just look at the massive difference in these median guesses. For the group where the wheel landed on the number 10, their median guess was 25%. But for the group where the wheel landed on 65, their median guess shot all the way up to 45%. Think about that. Every single person in that room watched the wheel spin. They knew for a fact it was completely random, yet that random wheel fundamentally skewed their perception of reality.
This leads us to a terrifyingly simple rule. The anchor doesn't have to be relevant, it just has to be first. The absolute randomness of the wheel, it didn't matter one single bit. The sheer, undeniable fact that the number was presented first completely hijacked the brain's logic center. That random number essentially planted a giant flag in the ground, and the participants' brains just couldn't help but navigate around it.
So, the crucial point here is understanding the exact science behind this whole phenomenon, which is known as anchoring and adjustment. When human beings are asked to estimate something, we almost always start from an initial value, the anchor, and then we adjust away from it to reach our final answer. But the major flaw in our psychological hardware is that the adjustment is almost always too small. We just stay tethered to that initial number. It pulls on us. Section 2. Even judges are not immune. The expertise illusion.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, but highly trained experts, professionals whose very jobs rely on objective logic, they can definitely outsmart this, right? Well, the shocking answer is absolutely not. Researchers Beert Englich and Thomas Musweiler ran a study testing actual criminal court judges. We're talking real judges with years of hard-earned experience. The researchers had prosecutors demand a sentence, but get this, that sentence was sometimes generated by a totally irrelevant source, sometimes literally by rolling a pair of dice. And yet, the judges anchored their sentencing decisions on that prosecutor's demand, shifting their final sentences right toward it. Just contrast those two things for a second. A random dice roll on one side and years of a human being's life in prison on the other. It's wild.
And this brings us to a pretty terrifying reality. Expertise and experience did not reduce the effect. Just let that sink in for a moment. Years of rigorous professional legal training, years of presiding over courtrooms, they offer absolutely zero protection against this invisible psychological pull. A single number spoken early in a courtroom quietly pulls the entire outcome toward itself, completely regardless of the objective facts of the case.
Section 3. The first offer trap, negotiations and salary.
All right, let's bring the stakes directly to your own wallet. This exact same bias doesn't just operate in laboratories or courtrooms. It operates in literally every single negotiation you will ever have, including your next salary conversation. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it completely flips conventional business advice totally upside down. Psychologists Adam Galinsky and Thomas Musweiler found across multiple experiments that whoever makes the first offer ends up with the better outcome. In fact, first offers are one of the absolute strongest predictors of where the final deal actually lands. I mean, for decades, the standard advice has always been, never name a number first, let the other guy speak. But the research proves that is often terrible advice, assuming, of course, that you've actually done your homework.
I absolutely love this phrasing. Your first number sets the gravity for the entire negotiation. By taking the initiative and dropping a well-researched, strategic first offer, you are effectively creating a psychological sun, and you lock the other party right into your orbit. Their brain will automatically use that anchoring and adjustment mechanism we talked about earlier. They're going to start at your number, and they just won't adjust far enough away from it.
Section 4. The Social Security Trick. Arbitrary Coherence at MIT.
Let's move on and see how this builds into something deeply personal and honestly pretty absurd. We're going to look at this incredible experiment conducted by Dan Ariely at MIT. I want you to imagine your own Social Security number right now. Just take the last 2 digits. Let's say, for example, it's 74. Now imagine I put a bottle of wine or a cordless computer trackball right in front of you, and I ask you to write down that number, 74, as if it were the price tag for the item, $74. That is exactly what Dan Ariely asked his MIT students to do. And then he had them bid on those actual items in a real auction.
The climax of this MIT study is absolutely wild. Students who had higher Social Security numbers, meaning they wrote down a higher initial price, bid significantly more money for the exact same products than students with lower numbers. Their own personal identification number, something that has literally zero correlation to the quality of a bottle of wine, entirely scrambled their ability to judge the actual objective value of the items right in front of them.
Ariely summarized his findings brilliantly. To paraphrase him here, your gut sense of a fair price is often just the last number you saw. We all really like to think we have this internal, highly sophisticated calculator for value. But this study proves that our internal sense of worth is incredibly fragile. It's easily manipulated by anything from the last 2 digits of a Social Security number to today's temperature to a random label you saw on a store shelf.
Section 5. Breaking the anchor's gravity, taking back your decisions.
So, we've traveled through 4 very different worlds in this explainer: the psychology lab, the criminal courtroom, the corporate boardroom, and the MIT lecture hall. But the underlying psychological pattern, it's perfectly identical in all 4. So how do we cut the strings? Well, here is a highly actionable mental toolkit you can use the very next time you're faced with a negotiation, a big purchase, or any major judgment. First, force a pause before committing to a final number. You've got to slow down the biological hardware. Second, actively ask yourself, what would I think if I had seen this information in a completely different order? What if the seller had named a price half as much? And finally, rigorously identify your reasoning. Are you truly reasoning from objective facts? Or are you just adjusting slightly from the anchor they quietly planted in your head?
I want to leave you with this final, pretty provocative thought to take into your day. The first number you hear isn't information. It's gravity. Knowing what we now know about the 999 trick, the spinning wheels, and the courtroom dice rolls, what invisible gravity is quietly dictating the biggest choices in your life right now? Think about it, recognize the pull, and take your power back. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the numbers around you.